A lot of this, a lot of the problems we have, I think, is an out of control federal government. Do you support Wisconsin, and if you have the governor's ear, would you support Wisconsin utilizing state sovereignty to block any unconstitutional federal intervention?
That's a tough question. I'm going to be real honest with you, because here's the problem that we have. I'll give you an example. Some of the ARA money that's come into the state, to our city, and we have taken ARA money, has been a result of federal mandates put onto us that we had no say in. So the idea is that if we pass, and by the way, I support this wholeheartedly, any mandates passed by any unit of government should come with funding, period. By the way, they wouldn't pass these then, because they would have to fund them. So for us to meet the Clean Water Act of the federal government, we are under a mandate to do millions of dollars of improvements in our wastewater treatment plant, in our separating of our storm sewers from wastewater, and a number of other activities. By the way, the mandate's coming for a little community like ours, just in the next 10 years, over $75 million to build out of new infrastructure. Yes. We're going to bankrupt every community over. By the way, we've solved 90% of the problem. Now they're trying to have to go after that top 10, that little bit of 10.
Does that come from like the EPA or something, or does it come from the Congress in Washington?
You mean the funding?
The mandates.
Yes, from Congress, because they not only passed the Clean Water Act, but they've had many amendments to it. Help me, 1985, I think, was the Clean Water Act, the first pieces of legislation, and we've had many other which apply stricter and stricter standards. Now we're treating, as you know, stormwater, not just wastewater. We have to treat it, and these mandates are millions of dollars. And I have no problem taking federal money to meet mandates that they've forced on our community. And by the way, some of them are stupid and foolish. Such as
Can they be challenged in court?
There has been every effort to stop this. There's been every effort to stop the DNR from adding extra rules to the federal regs. No one has been successful. This is an autonomous, powerful group of unelected bureaucrats who are telling us how to do business in our community.
Comments?
If you were, let's say that you were governor, something happened like that, and those mandates were coming across and they're outside of the constitutional provisions that are given to the federal government, how would you deal with those situations as a governor?
I think outside the Constitution, I would refuse them. But within the context of the Constitution, you'd have to accept the premise, is the federal government constitutionally responsible for clean water?
No.
Okay. So communities are responsible.
Correct.
The state is responsible. Okay.
Right.
What do you do when a federal government sets standards higher than what the community wants to set? And then along with it comes millions of dollars in liability. That's what I'm faced with as mayor.
One of the things,
Yeah, well, that's right.
I don't know if I want to disclose this, one of the things that like the Tea Party groups were talking about is, the gas tax is collected at a state level, and then sent to the federal government. So for example, we withhold the gas tax because they're imposing all these mandates and say, we're not giving you your money until you're violating the Constitution. Don't, solve this problem or you're not getting your gas tax money. Is that a solution you'd be open to?
We keep the gas tax standards higher than what the community wants to set. And then along with it comes millions of dollars in liability. That's what I'm faced with as mayor.
One of the things,
Yeah, well, that's right.
I don't know if I want to disclose this, one of the things that like the Tea Party groups were talking about is, the gas tax is collected at a state level, and then sent to the federal government. So for example, we withhold the gas tax because they're imposing all these mandates and say, we're not giving you your money until you're violating the Constitution. Don't, solve this problem or you're not getting your gas tax money. Is that a solution you'd be open to?
We keep the gas tax, and the federal portion of the gas tax goes to Washington.
But we collect it.
Well, we collect it, yes.
Collect your own money.
Yeah.
So So I mean, in that sense, we could withhold that from send that to the feds.
We wouldn't be very successful. There'd be a federal court that would rule on that in about 30 minutes.
I know we were talking about
Yeah.
proposing that.
If you were governor, I'd report to the militia training field every Saturday to defend the state of Wisconsin.
Because here's the thing, would I like to withhold every federal dollar we send? I mean, why just pick on the gas tax?
Right.
How do we
Because-
stop this?
Because they're doing a number of things we don't want them to do.
But how do
Oh,
we
by
stop
the way, they're
it?
not even using our money anymore.
I know. They're
$2 out of every 3, is it right now? Is borrowed or printed.
Right. But
So
how
they-
then how do the states go about stopping this?
If you could do it without harming the citizens, where the federal government uses its power and its authority to come back and harm the local state and local government,
What about the power and authority of the state?
well, this is where, again, states' rights and local, let me give you an example of, we've got to either be very pure in our thinking or not. And how many here, I'm going to give you a little test, so I'm going to give you a test about how you believe. How many in here support QEO? You know what the qualified economic offer, where the teachers are only allowed to go up, it's a state law, was a state law, it's been repealed, which only allowed local school boards, could only raise a teacher's salary so much because it was a combination of benefits and salary and it had to meet a certain percentage. I think it's 5.5%.
No, I don't
That
know.
was 3.8, but they got rid of it.
They got rid of it. Okay, now, conservatives have been supporting QEO since day one, right? They have. They have. Because they say it's going to keep local
Right.
property taxes down, right? Okay. Do you believe in local control? Do you believe the state should tell you how much to pay your
Absolutely
teachers?
not.
Okay. But it's funny how conservatives jump into letting the state and the federal government do their dirty work when they agree with them.
That's why we're constitutionalists, not
Yes,
conservatives.
well, exactly. So we go through this, I go through this argument with conservatives. How can you be for the state stepping in and telling the local school board what to do if you truly believe in local control? Well, but when they're doing what we want them to do, then we're all for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You either gotta be for it, or you gotta be against it and take your lumps.
It's like No Child Left Behind. I would assume you would. That was a Bush issue, and that's way out of the line of.
I said today on a Madison radio station today, why do we have in the state legislature a committee on education? Why? What do they have to do with education? What does the state have to do with anything about education? Well, Ronald Reagan said federal government should have nothing to do with education. Tried to abolish the Department of Education, by the way. By the way, it's 10 times bigger than it was when Ronald Reagan was criticizing it. Okay, and by the way, they also built a new building. And so I sit and you go to Madison, Madison should simply fund local education. Why should they fund it? Because our dollars go to Madison and it's dollars returned. Or let us keep them and let us fund our own education system. Why is there an education committee in the legislature? There shouldn't be one. Well, someone said, well, look at, we got to allow local school boards to expand virtual schools. We need to allow school boards to do this. No. If your local school board wants to have every kid in virtual school, and they make that decision at the local level by your school board, let them do it. But the state of Wisconsin insists on having that committee. It should be abolished.
So you and Scott Walker are gonna work to change that?
I certainly would like to see it go. Because they have no business talking about it, no business talking about anything about your local schools. I don't know if, I'm not that old, I'm only 58. I remember when school boards were run by city councils. We didn't have independent school districts. It was all a whole local process. All the state did was fund. Now they're into how you feed your kids, what for breakfast, whether you feed them lunch, whether you teach them so much in art, or whether, none of their business. You elect school board members, you make them responsible, you either vote them in or out. Yes.
And she's happy about it.
Yes. By the way, the curriculum in homeschool curriculums are far superior to the curriculums that are being taught to our children in our public schools.
I agree.
These curriculums have been tested. They've done all kinds of studies on them. These are really well-designed curriculums. But I'll say the Tea Party movement, you need to march to the Capitol, and the first day that the Education Committee meets, you say, you should abolish yourself. You have no right to talk about my school. You have no right to talk about my school here in Madison. I shouldn't have to go to Madison to talk about my school. Shouldn't have to.
I was just gonna say that in the public school system in this area here, if your child is not capable of keeping up with the rest of the first grade class and learning their 10 words a week to spell, then they'll knock it down to 5 words a week. By the end of the school year, 5 times 9 years, 4 weeks times 9 months, and there's so many words behind. Second grade comes along. Oh, gosh, they can't quite do the 15 words that are required in second grade, so we'll knock it down to 5 or 7 words. And by the time this accelerates through the 8th grades, these children are left way behind.
That's right.
Because it's a disservice, they're not taught what they need to know.
I talked to a school teacher the other day, and they said they keep changing the grading system, and they're using the grading system to affect outcome.
Yep.
Yeah. By the way, some of those grading system changes are mandated. Why do we have a state school superintendent? Why? What? Again, made the point.
Floor's open. We've pretty much reached everything. I guess we'll,
Yeah.
one more. Gay marriage. What's your stance on gay marriage?
First of all, how
In
can a
one
judge
word.
in California overrule
Yes.
7 million voters? What gives him that power? What gives him that power? And first of all, gay marriage is an atrocity. It's an affront to God if you're a believer. Absolutely. I was so disheartened. I was in Minneapolis one day and I was driving around. My wife and I, in fact, were just down there for a weekend a couple of years ago, and one of the major denominations having a debate. They had their national conference there on whether to ordain gay ministers. And one group got up and says, you gotta love people, well, you can't be judgmental. The next group got up and said this, and this should have ended the argument. What does God's word say about this? Oh, but you gotta love, if Jesus was here today, he'd have a whole different view of this.
Same
Well,
yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Genesis to Revelation, you find me one word that acknowledges or even gives credence to this immoral, blasphemous
We
act.
stone them, the Bible says.
And so, it's there's no basis for it.
Dave, one area that has always been, a lot of us have been upset about in funding, and I've said one place they can cut funding is the funding for Planned Parenthood. I'm
Yes.
assuming that you're gonna agree with that, but I would just
Yes.
like to ask you that question. What would be your position on funding of Planned Parenthood?
First of all, it's, what Planned Parenthood is what they're trying to fund is the unplanned lives of people who don't take having a child seriously. Not only is Planned Parenthood, some of their activities, which is the most offensive, which is funding abortion or funding information leading to abortion or leading to those options. First of all, again, let's go back to this. The government has no business being in any business like that business at all. None whatsoever. It shouldn't be in the business of one way or the other affecting, quote, Planned Parenthood. The options that they're leaving our children, and I know some of you come from a Catholic background, some come from a Protestant background, but I'm getting more and more, and let me say this, I'm getting more and more that the Catholics had it right from the very beginning when they started this whole issue of birth control. Is what it did was it made no consequence for sex. There was no consequence, none whatsoever. And what God teaches us is that that's in the bond of marriage between a man and a woman. And as a result, we produce children, and we love them, and we care for them, and we create another generation just like that. And when we took that beautiful thing that God created and we turned it into entertainment, as our television shows have turned it into, we have taken a very, very wrong turn in our culture. And I'm not saying I totally accept the Catholic view. I'm not Catholic, I'm Protestant. The Catholic view of that. But the human cry that says we are now tinkering with when a man and a woman, we have now taken it and we've given unmarried couples and people who have not in a committed relationship to behave in ways as married couples do. There's something wrong with that.